Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Foresee Markets. I am your host, Alejandro Ramirez, Lemus, and I have Serhii with me, my co-host. Serhii?
Hello, everybody, and today we will be watching our continuation on the journey into investing of IPOs. So, Alejandro, can you tell us how did it went and what we have at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so in order to just give a little background, so we participated in the SpaceX IPO. So we tried to buy 2,000 shares, as we said on a previous episode. Unfortunately, nobody got 2,000 shares. The most any single retailer got was 1,000 shares, and then afterwards you had to go in the open market. I wanted to get 2,000, and Charles Schwab gave me 44 shares. Thank you, Charles Schwab. So then I had to go to the open market and get the rest, right? So when I
And
when
as
I
there are
jumped
great
in,
proof that there is a huge demand, right?
yeah, there was like demand was incredible, man. It moved half a billion shares in one day, and it continued to move half a billion shares the same way on Monday, and then again on Tuesday, and then finally today, it slowed down a bit. I think it was moving like 180 million shares, and actually, I think yesterday I moved like a quarter billion shares, but it's still massively. So Friday, Monday, that is 1 billion shares. Then yesterday I moved 250 million shares, and then today, last time I checked, I had moved about 180 million shares or so. So this thing is very, very, very liquid, right? That's one thing. The other thing that is really interesting is we entered, like, when we finally managed to get our order in. By that time the stock had already skyrocketed to $160. So we placed our order, and then by that time, obviously, now we don't have like enough money to buy 2,000 shares. So we bought the equivalent of 2,000 within $160 price range, which allowed us to get about 1,500 shares or so. So what happened to those 1,500 is that I put a trail stop on it, and the stock just kept on climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing all the way until I got to $225. And then it started to deteriorate a bit until it dropped. Once it hit 214, it sold. So basically, we made about $50 per share, profit $55 on 1,500 shares, right? So you do the math, like $50 times 1,500 shares in 3 days. Your bank will never give that to you. Like, your bank is never gonna give you $60 or $75,000 in a couple of days. Yeah, like, unless you have like millions and millions invested. So that's how much this stock gave us in a period of 3 days. So how is it doing sense? So I'm gonna share my screen, and we are going to talk about a few of the things that are happening with the stock. So here was the entry point, like right here, 150. Anybody who was smart enough to place a market order, I wasn't. I actually figured like it might just drop down a little bit and then go up. But then when I saw that it was just climbing and climbing, like by the second, I was like, oh man, I gotta enter. So I entered about right here, right at the peak of the first minute. Then it climbed a little bit higher, and then it started to drop a bit. And then, as everyone else would do, I was like kicking myself in the behind, thinking like, why didn't I like wait until 157, right? That's just like, buyer's remorse or whatnot. But I'm happy I entered anyways, because the stock just kept on climbing until it came to about right here, right? And this is where the deterioration of the stock started to happen. And this was 2 days later, right? So we ended up selling about right here when it got to about 214, right yesterday at about uh, I think this was like around 10 a.m. New York time when this happened, 10, 11 a.m. So that's when I saw it trigger. I, saved my losses, and I left it at that. Okay. So that's enough for the technicals of this. Sir, if you have any comments about this before we move on to the next segment.
I think we can move to the next segment. It was pretty interesting
Okay.
to see how the price goes and what is your strategy in entries and exits. So
Yeah.
a lot of people, I
So
think, will be really interested in watching into this mechanics.
yeah, okay. So basically, when we enter any position, you wanna be able to top your losses, like stop your losses. So you want to enter a position in the direction that you know is going to make you money. If you're shorting something, you want to make sure that it's actually going down in price. If you're going to long something, you want to try to make sure it's going to go up in price. And there's always room for for being wrong, right? Like to be human is to err, as they say. So that means that when you are setting up your positions, you want to make sure that the positions you create are going to move in the direction that you want them to. Otherwise, you're going to lose money. And you want to make sure that you cap your losses if you're going to be in a vulnerable position. You don't want to like throw your house out the window, right? So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But before that, we're going to talk about what actually happened to SpaceX. So yesterday, they bought a company called like SpaceX acquired a company, a SpaceX AI acquisition. They bought a company yesterday. I forgot the name of the company, Cursor. They acquired Cursor for $60 billion. As soon as they did that, the stock jumped to $225, right? And for anyone who was not paying attention, like when they made that announcement, it just went up. Why? Because SpaceX is trying to sell intelligence as a service, which is like a whole new market, right? And remember, this is the guy who came up with, you know, he didn't invent the electric vehicle, but he made it so that it's accessible for anybody who wants it, right? Before that, getting an electric vehicle was not really that accessible to people. Now, anybody who wants an electric vehicle, they can just go and get it. So that's what he wants to do for intelligence. He wants to say, like, if you have a robot, we're going to put intelligence on it. If you have, stuff that you want to do in your own computer, we're going to like sell you that intelligence, and they want to sell intelligence as a service. And as far as I know, like right now we have artificial intelligence, like AI, like ChatGPT and Claude and the other ones. But to truly have intelligence as a service, you're going to have to reinvent the wheel on this. And that's what Elon Musk is trying to do by creating his data centers in space. And there's a lot of people who are putting money into it, right? Like I was reading that um, like there was like $1 billion worth of shares that were bought by a fund because they believe in what Elon Musk is trying to accomplish. And I'm trying to remember which fund that was. Like the stock symbol is GS, but I cannot remember what fund that represents. Anyways, whichever fund it was, is GS for anyone who wants to look it up. They ended up buying like $1 billion worth of SpaceX when that happened. So why is the price dropping today, right? Like why is this thing from 200 plus going to $191, right? Well, if you look at what's happening here, SpaceX is now being utilized by leverage ETFs. Anyone who's not familiar with a leverage ETF, what happens is that the ETF or the exchange traded fund, they will go out and they will buy a whole bunch of the stock, or they will subscribe to other ETFs that are holding the stock. And then what they do is they leverage double whatever direction you're going. So if you're saying we are going to go long on this direction, you don't actually buy the stock. What you do is you're leveraging on the price, right? So if the price goes from 100 to 120, you just made $20 if you went long. But if the stock goes down to 100 and I'm sorry, not 20, but 110, you made $20, right? But if it goes down to 90, you just lost $20 unless you shorted the position. So why do
So if
people
it
do
was
this?
with your position, so basically you're gaining like multiple times faster than if you invested into the stock itself, right? But if it's losing,
Correct.
you're a loser as well
You're
faster.
losing just
You're
as
losing
much.
just that much. And
And
there is
because
also
it's
a
what
huge
we,
risk that you can be liquidated, right?
oh yeah. And that's the other thing. Like if you lose, let's say that because when you enter, you have to have leverage and then you use margin. So now let's say that you enter and you have like $1,000 to enter. And then you say, okay, I want to do 10 shares of SpaceX. And now the stock goes up by 20 points. You just made $20, right? Or $40. But if it goes down by 20 points, you just lost $40. So your $1,000 is now only worth 960. When it closes, you don't have any stock or anything. So when you start the next day, you start from 960. So even if the stock went up overnight, you don't get to benefit from that gap. You also don't get to benefit from the loss, but because you never actually own the shares, you don't really risk that much money. But at the same time, your losses can be huge. So let's say, for example, that like right now SpaceX is trading for $191 as we see here. If you are thinking this is going to drop more, you can enter short, and then your leverage position will be on margin. Now, if it continues to drop, every dollar that it drops, it will give you $2. But the problem is that if it starts to go up again, you're going to start losing money unless you close your position. So the risk on this thing is so huge. I don't recommend it for anyone who's got a weak heart. Me personally, I don't touch it. Like I just stay away from leverage ETFs because I like the knowledge that I own the stock, because then I can profit from it in other ways. And this is what we're going to be talking about shortly. So leverage ETFs, as soon as this happened today, the shares started to drop. So when the announcement was made, it went from like 205 to 204 because now there's leverage. So people don't necessarily have to own the stock. They can capture their earnings. They can capture their profits. And now they can just leverage on the, whether or not the stock goes up and down, or they can move their money to new shares, right? Something they think has a better horizon. Me personally, I'm long on SpaceX. So I'm waiting for the stock to hit about 185, and then I'm going to buy myself about 1,000 shares again, and then just hold them for a while. Okay, so is it gonna hit 185? I don't know. I'm thinking that it will. I don't think it's gonna stay there very long, but when it does, I already have a limit order in place to buy those shares. Okay, so now this here says that the SpaceX IPO ETF flows hit a 6.2 billion reversal. So what happened is that there were people who were betting on the ETFs, and they were trying to get exposure to SpaceX, but they were not able to buy directly. So they started buying into the ETFs that held it to be able to capture the initial earnings, right? Once they got their initial earnings, they exited and they went ahead and probably bought it directly, right? So from a $4.6 billion inflow before posting, after posting, they took out 6.2 billion outflow in the same day. That means that there's $2 billion that were pulled from ARK basically on the same day, because people went in. They said, we're going to take advantage of, the fact that we cannot buy directly. We're going to buy it through ARK. Once it started to sell publicly and people were comfortable with the price, they liquidated in ARK, and more likely than not, they went ahead and bought SpaceX directly because they saw that there was greater gains to be made off of that, right? So this is what was reported today. And then also over the past couple of days, SpaceX has surpassed a lot of the trillion-dollar companies, like the mega caps. I think the last one that was surpassed was Amazon. So basically right now, once it goes above $200 at the pre-market price, SpaceX was worth 2.9 trillion, which as of my last check was bigger than Amazon, right? So their market capitalization is now worth more than Amazon is, but who knows if that's going to stay there. The point is that the stock is growing. It's got a lot of potential, and investors believe that this stock has a lot of room to grow. Elon Musk himself has said that he's expecting this company to be worth about $30 trillion. And he said that by 2030, 4 years from now, the company should have revenues of over 1 trillion, right? This is a company that's making $20 billion right now, and he's basically saying that it's going to be making $1 trillion. That means that within the next 5 years, that has to go up by like 5,000% in revenues. So is it possible?
Huge growth.
I mean,
Okay,
yeah,
really huge growth.
anything's possible, right? But the things that like SpaceX is trying to consolidate with Tesla, so the two companies come together, they'll be able to combine resources. As we know, Tesla is also trying to build robots, and they have a lot of like this megawatt electrical plants and everything else. And SpaceX is trying to build the roadway to get AI into space. So if you combine the two companies, who knows what the possibilities are going to be. But this is one of the ways that Elon Musk is going to try to make SpaceX be worth, $1 trillion in revenue by 2030. So for anyone who owns Tesla right now, if that merger does happen at some point, your shares would be liquidated, and then you would have to buy SpaceX, or maybe they'll make it so that your shares in Tesla will be, converted into SpaceX shares for an equivalent price. We don't really know how they're gonna do it, but that's usually how that will happen. Okay, what else are we looking at? So here, this is where SpaceX jumps 49% and overtakes Amazon in market valuation. What does that mean? That means that people are saying, we think SpaceX is worth more than Amazon, which is very incredible because Amazon just had their best quarter yet. I think like they reported something like $60 billion in profits, right? Not revenue, profits. And people are saying, yeah, we think SpaceX is worth more than you, Amazon. Thank you so much. We're leaving. We're going to go to SpaceX now. So that's pretty interesting. So that's the same one. Yeah, okay. So this is what I was talking about earlier, right? So SpaceX, basically retail investors like myself, we did not manage to capture as many shares as we wanted. Obviously, I captured 44 shares. Some investors only capture like one share, right? And then the record, this was like 86.2 billion on the IPO. They were only expecting to get 75 billion, so it surpassed it by almost 11.2 billion, which is just impressive for any IPO. So that's what this news article is about. And then here, this is what I was talking about earlier, right? So if you're using a leverage ETF, be extra careful. Do not bet your house on it, right? Because on a leverage ETF, it's like a casino. And whenever you gamble, the house always wins. So just make sure that if you're going to gamble on a leverage ETF because you want to get exposed to the whole price of the share, just remember that there's other ways to do the same thing and not lose the money, right? How do you do that? So there's these things called options, and we're going to get into them later on another episode. But the way that an option works is you, as the buyer or the seller of the option, will have a particular requirement. Me personally, for SpaceX, I sold short options at $135 a share because that's the entry price, right? But I did it for July 17th. So the system basically says that by July 17th, if the stock drops to 135 or below, I, as the seller of the option, will be forced to acquire the shares at $135. What does that mean? Well, that basically means that we sold the shares at 214. Then I sold 10 of these contracts, which made me $1,850. And I'm saying if the stock drops to 135 below, I will buy it. And then the market comes back and says, thank you for your troubles. We will sell you this at $135 minus $1.85. So that means that I will essentially get the shares at $133.50 per share. I'd be buying 1,000 shares and they would cost me $133,150. I've been working on my math. Sorry. Thanks for noticing. So, yeah, because I like terrible arithmetic, but I had to practice these numbers before I came on the show, just so I could
At some
remember.
episode, we will like draw the curves and see how it works actually, like the
Right,
whole
they're gonna be
mechanics.
like, right.
We will go
Exactly,
really
exactly.
deep dive into it.
Yeah. And so that's how this works. So that means that like you as an investor, if you want to leverage this, you can basically go in and say, you know what? I only have like $7,000, but I want to make a little money, right? So at $7,000, you could like make $18 by saying, if the stock drops to $70 between now and next month, I will buy it. And then the market will say, okay, here's $18. Thank you for your troubles, right? If you use a leverage ETF and you try to do the exact same thing, you could actually lose like $100, $200, $300. This way, it's, in my opinion, a little bit safer. Although it does carry a lot of risk, it has less risk than a leverage EPS, in my opinion, if you know how to use them wisely. Obviously, just like any other instrument in the stock market, if you don't pay attention, you could end up, losing your shirt, as they say. And that is pretty much it. So
Long story short, like
what's
take your calculations about the risk, understand the instruments, and use these
correct?
instruments wisely.
Yeah, exactly. So in summary, for this one first week of SpaceX holding, we opened our position at 163, sold at 214, somewhere around here. And now we are waiting for the stock to drop to about 185, which may happen, tomorrow or over the next week. I think if it doesn't happen in this next couple of days, we're not gonna see this price again until mid-July when we get an announcement for the extra 30% of shares, which will be released in August. I think when that happens, the price of the shares will dilute because, obviously there's going to be more shares available for people to purchase. And I think that's going to cause the price of the stock to drop. So until then, we're going to continue to watch the stock and we're going to continue to pay attention and report on it, as well as, other more interesting facts than just what the SpaceX stock is doing. So, Serhii, what do you got to say about this, man?
Yeah, this is fascinating. Like how one company telling about great future which will be built takes a lot of money, actually.
Oh
And this
yeah,
is really cool, really cool.
and this is how they build it,
Because
right?
well, it's really interesting more how they basically bought Cursor. It's like one of the integrated development environments that I've been using for development as well. So it's like combines a whole
Yeah,
AI company.
I know, right? And yeah, and that's what's crazy that like they're like putting their money where their mouth is. They're saying we're gonna do this, and they are doing it, right? It's not like they're saying, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna talk about it, we're gonna have a committee, then we're gonna have a meeting, then we're gonna get like permits and blah. They're saying like we're gonna do this. Like here we go. This is what we need. We're gonna get started with this because we have a future to build. And that's what a lot of people are putting their money on, right? Like they're not saying this company is worth $1 trillion right now. They're saying this company is going to be worth $30 trillion in the future. And I want to be a part of that. And, that's where many of us are, where we believe that this is, the way to get there. So it's pretty interesting to be here right now.
Absolutely. Totally agree. So
Yeah.
good.
Anyways, yeah. So, yeah, that's everything we have for today. So, I'll let Sergey say our tagline. Subscribe, like and subscribe.
Yep. Subscribe, right? Comment, like, share it to your friends. And if you have
That's
any
right.
topics you want to discuss and dive deep, so also let us know. So we will make separate episodes on that as well.
That's right. And with that, we leave you for this week. Thank you all for watching Foresee Markets podcast. And we will see you again next week with an update on SpaceX plus some other interesting things that have been happening in the stock market. And with that, we leave you. Thank you all so much and see you next time.